Thank you, Satish. So something is happening here. And I've been working with the Almanac for a couple of years, and I've seen it many times, and it's why we do this. When we share our stories, something happens. And actually, I came here by mistake a week ago. All my fault, Satish. But I got the day wrong. So I showed up here last Saturday at noon. I wasn't alone. Carol Connolly, Saint Paul's Poet Laureate, also had it wrong. So we showed up, and we ended up staying for 3 hours. And an impromptu audience was put together for us, and we all shared our stories. And not just those of us who were published in the Almanac. Everybody took a turn. And it was amazing. And it put this place on the map for me. I live on the other side of Saint Paul, and I had never been to this cafe before. And I really have a sense now of people and place, and it's beautiful. So something happens when we share our stories. And I'm going to share 4 from 3 different almanacs with you today. They're not all my stories, and I hope that you get to see me a little bit, that this puts me on the map. So my first encounter with the Almanac was through my son, who was a 5th grader at the time. And I knew nothing about the Almanac, but his teacher invited all the kids to write about their favorite place in Saint Paul. And we were thrilled when our son came home and said, "Mom, I have a story published in a book." What was he, like 10 years old? We couldn't believe it. This is his story. It's called College Park. My favorite place in St. Paul is College Park. It's my favorite place because it's practically my backyard, where I can go every day, whenever I want. I can play tennis, basketball, football, and a bunch of other really fun sports. There are mini forests in College Park with dead branches, so you can always make a fort or look for sticks to whack your friends with. The whole place is great for hiding things. That's why it has its very own geocache. So whenever you're there and you're pretty bored, just take a look and you might even find it. College Park is awesome in the winter because of its famous sledding hills called Suicide and Daredevil. And ever since they put in some boards to keep people from slipping, they're more hardcore than ever. Get ready and go! Wah! Bump, 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 crash. Well, there's a messy scene, but on the bright side, it was a heck of a ride. My son's name is Jamie Steinmann. So, finding our place in St. Paul has taken generations. And it was another kind of thrill for me when I asked my mom, who I knew had grown up in St. Paul. I grew up in Minneapolis, but I knew my mom had grown up in St. Paul in part. And I said, well, you should write a story for the Almanac. And her parents came here from Scotland, and I don't know that my mom always felt like this was her home. So this is the story she wrote, called They Build Ice Palaces There. When I was 8 years old and living in Pennsylvania, my father took a new job in Minnesota at the Saint Paul Foundry. He and my mother had immigrated to America from Scotland and always spoke lovingly of their hometown of Edinburgh. But work opportunities were better in America. The job in St. Paul sounded the most promising yet, but I had just spent the year making new friends in Pittsburgh after moving there from Philadelphia, and I was not happy to be moving again. A family friend tried to cheer me up by saying, "You'll love St. Paul. They build ice palaces there." When we first moved to St. Paul in 1942, we stayed in a hotel downtown, but finally found a house to rent right across the street from the Mississippi River. I was enrolled in the 3rd grade at Groveland Park Grade School, arriving for the last half of the year, and I didn't have any friends. To make matters worse, my class had not yet learned cursive writing, as I had already done at my former school. The teacher told me to go back to printing until the rest of the class had a chance to learn cursive. I felt like I had flunked a grade. My new Minnesota life felt better when I met Kay, who was also new to Groveland Park. We would walk home together from school using a shortcut through the vacant lot on Cleveland Avenue near St. Clair. We had many adventures in the long, weedy grass, imagining we were lost in the jungle. Sometimes we would go inside King's drugstore, where we would get a Coke at the fountain. Kay and I dreamed we would be discovered by a Hollywood scout and become movie stars just like Lana Turner. I joined Brownies and Girl Scouts and the Edith Bush Little Theater in Highland. My first role was as a village child in Tom Sawyer. I don't recall the first time I saw an ice palace, but I do remember going to watch Saint Paul Carnival parades and learning to enjoy snowy Minnesota winters. After school, I would often go sledding with friends on a hill in the neighborhood or go ice skating at the rink in the park by the school, which I see is still there. Often I was pegged as the little Scottish girl, but I was American and I wanted to fit in. My mother, however, never wanted me to forget my Scottish roots, and with her thick Scottish accent, she filled me with stories about all the great Scottish authors, poets, and inventors. She never ceased to be amazed at some of the questions people would ask her. Do they have ice cream in Scotland? Or is it true that Scots are stingy with money? Or what language do they speak in Scotland? She never failed to get the record straight. When I was in 6th grade, my mother and I went to Scotland for several months to visit relatives. After we returned home and I returned to school, the geography teacher at Groveland, who always made students stand up when called upon, asked me to tell the class about Scotland. Anxious to sit down as quickly as possible, I said, "There's not much to tell." People spoke the same language as we did. They mostly liked the same food we liked, but it did rain more than it snowed here. Scotland really wasn't that different from America. When I got home and told my mother that the teacher had asked me to tell the class about Scotland, my mother asked what I had said. She got quite angry that I hadn't thought to speak of the beauty of Scotland, or how warm and kind the people are, or that the city of Edinburgh has a real castle built on the top of a hill, which you can see for miles around. Later in life, I came to understand how my mother felt about her home. After all, I had come to love my new hometown, Saint Paul, Minnesota, and it too had its very own palace made of ice. That was my mom's story. Her name is Lori Gustafson. So it must mean something that finally I'm able to call St. Paul my home. And I'm just going to read you my own poem that was published in this latest edition of the Saint Paul Almanac. It's called Borderland at the Raymond Avenue Bridge. Train tracks, a complicated braid of lines between twin cities on opposite horizons, separate south and north sides of the neighborhood. This borderland, this old corridor of industry, steel polished by 100-ton traffic, graveled and aching with heavy noise, can only be crossed on foot. It's a good place to stop and watch train cars, painted over in a neon language, uncoupled back and forth words from some traveling sentence. It's a good place to see sky, where birds punctuate the power lines until the trumpet sounds. Most people obey the warning signals and stick to the trip-trap bridge. They avoid the tracks and the stop-for-no-one progress of trains. They don't notice scraps of spring-fed ponds, red gold prairie grass, and tree-tangled grapevine. This borderland is left for neon-vested workers, wanderers, runaways, and the coyotes, always just two of them, heading east at dusk. And then I'm just going to finish with a haiku. And it's very appropriate because, you know, the Saint Paul Almanac is a date book. And it's divided into months and days. And I'm just so pleased that my November haiku opens the month of November. And it was written last year when the ice was just coming in on Como Lake. And I just walked around Como Lake a couple days ago and noticed the ice is coming in on the north side. Como Lake haiku. Blue morning circuit, the lake ice forming, 2 swans with signet stopped by. Thank you. And I wanted to introduce someone before my turn was over, and now I don't see her. Is Kimberly in the room? Just out of my eye shot? We are really pleased this morning to have our founder, our executive director, Kimberly Nightingale. This is her dream and her project. And don't forget to, am I the last one? No. Okay. Don't forget to come and see me afterwards for the chalkboard. Thank you.